Say two words that are more controversial than abortion today. I'm just going to say them, and if you have, ears that might tingle with these words, just shut your ears. I'm going to say it: voter fraud. I said it: voter fraud. And I'm going to just say right now, it's going to be shocking to y'all. There is voter fraud. And I know because we're one of the few states that actually really prosecutes it. We've had about 900 cases in the last couple of years going. We had over 500 cases waiting to be prosecuted when COVID hit. We have over 386 cases that we were investigating. And yet, the world will tell you, the media will tell you, no voter fraud. And why do they tell you that? Because most states don't prosecute. They don't have any. When I got to this office, there was only one lawyer prosecuting voter fraud. We now have 4. I got the legislature to give me more resources, and every one of them has been full-time busy fighting voter fraud. And then, of course, we had this election. And for those of you who don't know, Texas is not Georgia. Texas is not Arizona. Why are we different? They tried the same thing here. We had 12 lawsuits where these counties, not where we are here in Bulverde, not in Hays County, not in my county. Guess where these cases occurred? Harris, Bear, Travis. Those 3 counties particularly. We're having local judges, local elected officials come out and say, "Oh yeah, you can mail out as many mail-out ballots as you want, even though the legislature limited who can get mail-out ballots." And so I told my team, I said, "I don't know what's going on here, but this is the most organized, well-funded campaign to change what's happening in Texas that I've ever seen." Yeah. And sure enough, I sat down with my team. I said, "Look, we've got 12 lawsuits. They're all in the worst counties. We're going to lose." Because they file in courts where they go to liberal judges who don't care what the legislature said, and they just change the law. I know that's shocking to you all that we have liberal judges in these counties, but it is true. And so we knew we were going to lose, and guess what? Because of the change in the Court of Appeals in Bexar County, Harris County, Dallas County, and Travis County, we don't have a good Court of Appeals. They also were going to let the laws be changed. And what did that mean? Well, that meant over 1 million mail-in ballots in Travis. That meant over 1 million Bexar County ballots. That meant over 2.5 million Harris County. I want you to add those numbers up. It's a lot. Yeah. If you don't do math, it's a lot. And those numbers, does anybody remember how much Trump won by last time in Texas? Not as many, 620,000. So, I told my team, I'm sorry to inform you, normally if you go like 10-2 or 11-1, that's a good number. That's a good winning percentage. If you go, 8-4, that's a pretty good number. In this case, team, you got to go 12-0. Because if we lose one time, if Harris County can send out 2.5 million ballots, we're going to lose the state. It's over. They'll just send these things out. They're not signature verified. And what I mean by that is, you hear all this thing that talk about there's no evidence of voter fraud. That is actually true. There's not a lot of evidence of voter fraud. You know why? Because they figured out how to do it. And the way that they do it is, normally, if you're going to do a mail-in ballot under Texas, you got to follow one of the exceptions. You sign your application, you send it in. They have a copy of your signature. Then, when you get your mail-in, your ballot that you requested, you have to sign the envelope and you stick your ballot in the envelope so they can then match your signature. It's not as good as photo ID, nowhere close. That's why we don't have many exceptions. They can match your signature. What did they do in this case? Well, they eliminated applying. So you never had to put your signature on it. Therefore, when they mail them out, which they did all over the country, now there's no way to verify that you actually the ones that requested the ballot. Because they just mail it to everybody, so you have no idea, whoever signs that, you have no idea who it is. That's the system that we got into in all of these states, and that's what they were trying to do in Texas. We were on the list with Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, all of it, Arizona. And as it turns out, by a lot of hard work and really some creative thinking, and they had us blocked, by the way. These courts of appeals were not going to hear our cases in time. They were all going to get mailed out. And then once the genie's out of the bottle, how do we fix it? Almost impossible. We saw what happened. Well, we actually won all 12 cases. Every single one. These states shut down their county. I'd never seen it in my life. Had anybody ever seen it? Because it never happened before. And what were they doing? They were doing what they would have done in Texas. If we'd been Harris, pick a county that they were trying to do this in. They would have stopped their county. They would have let all the real votes be counted. And then they would have gotten in enough mail-in ballots that they could have just changed the election. That's what they were trying to do here. They didn't do it. And I called President Trump in May of that year. And I said, President Trump, I just want you to know, and I literally just called him for one purpose. I said, I am worried about your re-election. And if I'm going to just tell you right now, I don't know what's going on in other states. I've never seen an effort like this. I'm super well funded. Millions, hundreds of millions of dollars are being spent on this. And I said, all I know is about Texas. I think you need to worry about the rest of the country. And to be honest with you, if I lose one case here, you're going to lose Texas. That's my prediction. And I'm really worried that we're going to lose one case because the odds of us winning all 12 are really low. And you need to figure this out everywhere else because I'm busy here. And sure enough, we saw on election night exactly what happened. It was a really smart strategy. And yet, we were able to stop it in Texas. But you know what? And I'm going to finish the election fraud stuff on this note. And by the way, I had a showing Saturday night after Trump came into town. I could go see him. And just so you know, he did endorse me a couple times. And we showed 2,000 Mules. How many have seen that movie? Yeah. If you haven't seen this movie, it is remarkably good. And I am just amazed at what they put together. And it is very convincing. And of course, I knew it from a long time ago that this was likely voter fraud just because I got to see, I had a front row seat to the whole thing. So, and of course, you all know I did file this little lawsuit against the other 4 states for they were part of this disaster, including a Republican state, Georgia. And I want to tell you about Georgia. So I sued Georgia, not because they had voter fraud, but because they didn't follow the Constitution. They were supposed to follow their state laws, and they let local judges, just like they were trying to do here, change the law. And that's under the Constitution not allowed. How we filed that case and did not have standing is remarkable to me. It makes no sense. And yet, the State Bar of Texas is now trying to take my license away because I filed that case. If you can believe that. Yes. So, and not just mine, but I have a first assistant who works for me, so they're trying to intimidate people that work for me. And this is not an elected bar. This is a bunch of bureaucrat, mostly very liberal lawyers who are trying to come into my office and tell you. But I want to talk about Georgia real quick. Georgia and Texas 4 years ago had the same numbers for Trump, same percentage win. This time, he wins by 620,000 votes, which was like 8 to 9% in Texas. He loses in Georgia by what? What was it, like 12,000 votes, 10,000 votes? And then what was the difference? Their attorney general, their governor, their elections guy decided that instead of fighting it like we did, they decided to sign consent decrees with Stacey Abrams, who ran for governor on the Democratic side. And what did that mean? That meant that they had no signature verification. They didn't follow their own laws on mail-in ballots. They sent out as many as they want. And then they, as you saw in 2,000 Mules, they have drop boxes everywhere that are unguarded that they just stuff the ballot box with.
And they are Republicans.
Well, yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. So that's the tale of 2 states, Georgia and Texas. We fought, they didn't. I'm telling you, it matters. And so let me tell you how we're in trouble now. And I've talked about this at other places. They've also threatened my license on this. I'm supposedly, the First Amendment is one of those things I'm not supposed to have these days. I'm not allowed to criticize Republican criminal court of appeals. How many of y'all know, let's just say all 9 members of the Court of Criminal Appeals in Texas? I don't either. I think a pretty genius move. They are nine Republicans. We have a bifurcated system in Texas that most people don't understand. And we're only one of 2 states where we have a Texas Supreme Court and we have the Court of Criminal Appeals. Court of Criminal Appeals is really the highest court on all criminal matters. Texas Supreme Court is the highest court on civil matters. So if you have if you're going to have an appeal on a bad ruling, or a ruling you think is bad, you go to the Criminal Court of Appeals for criminal. Well, we had one of those cases where we had won. And it was a statute that was passed in 1951 by the Texas legislature. And they passed a statute, and they directed the Attorney General to prosecute voter fraud, presumably because the local DAs weren't doing it. And if you don't know the history of how our state works, it's a little unfortunate, but the local DAs have complete authority over all criminal matters, except in 1951, they granted the Attorney General voter fraud, probably because no one was prosecuting it. And so, the Constitution gives the Attorney General several functions. And I actually say it's actually 4, but I'm not going to say 4 because I've learned that if you say the number and forget one, people really hold that against you. I've seen that happen. So my job is to represent the people in front of the Texas Supreme Court. That's one. Number two, I'm supposed to handle corporate fraud. So if there are corporations that are committing frauds against consumers, that's my job to go after them. Three, I'm supposed to deal with opinions. So if the governor has a question about law or some legislator has a question on law, we answer those questions by law. And guess what the fourth thing is? The fourth thing is I do such things as are required by law. Now, this is not meant to be a hard question, but who passes laws? The legislature. So they pass a law. The Court of Criminal Appeals, 8-1. Kevin Urey being the only dissenting voice. Comes out, and by the way, they do this 2 days after the filing deadline because there's 9 of them. 3 of them are up, and they're waiting for the filing deadline December 13th to pass. And they put this opinion out on December 15th after the filing deadline. Is that convenient or is that coincidence?
Convenient.
Very interesting to me. So they come out with this opinion. They say they strike down the law. They say the Attorney General cannot prosecute voter fraud. You know why? Because it's totally up to the DAs, they say, because the DAs are given that authority in the Constitution. And they say that I don't have the authority, because I'm in the executive branch, to go to court. I want you to think about that.
What?
I don't have the authority, because that's a judicial function. Now I'm violating separation of powers. Now, have you ever heard of an attorney general that can't go to court in any state? I don't think that's what the founders envisioned. And yet, unfortunately, if that's true, this Texas Supreme Court should strike down my ability to represent the state in the 38,000 cases we have going. So according to them, I can no longer bring cases of voter fraud. How convenient is that? Now Soros has DAs in Travis County. He's got his Democrat DA in Bexar County, Houston. What do you think is going to happen now on fraud? If I can't prosecute voter fraud, who's going to do it? You think the DAs?
No.
They may actually announce we need another 200,000 votes before we can win. And they can even admit they're doing it. And guess what? The Court of Criminal Appeals says, sorry, there's nothing you can do about it. So I'm going to tell you the solution is really several pieces of legislation. One is we need an appeal to the Supreme Court on bad decisions by the Court of Criminal Appeals. Second, you've got to make sure the next round that we pay attention to those people and get rid of everybody but Kevin Urey. And I'm going to keep talking about this, even though the bar says I'm not allowed to.
Do it.
And I don't care if it's. We also need to repass. I want the legislature to repass another criminal statute and make them strike it down because it'll take them a couple of years, and by that time you guys can unelect the 3 that are up. And then I want you guys and me to have the authority to sue them civilly, just like we did on the heartbeat bill, so that